Hey everyone, I'm just going to start letting people in.
Hello.
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 I've got, I'm going to ask an icebreaker question of you all that I'd like you to put um, into the chat. What is the hardest part? What is the hardest part of managing former peers? So put it in the chat. What is the hardest part of managing former peers? Let some more people in. So as people are joining, good afternoon, everyone, morning, evening. Question for you all, what is the hardest part of managing your former peers? So meaning if you have been an SDR and then got promoted into a manager role, what's been the hardest part of that transition? So put it into the chat, and let's see what we have. I can just say from my side, it was people thinking that they can get away with murder because you used to work with them, and then you're just having to try and rein them in. The best the best one was when we went to sales kickoff, and I just become a manager, and two of the SDRs didn't even show up for SKO in Las Vegas. They went to the gym instead, and then they were found by a senior person in the business asking why are you both in the gym? So that was fun. I'll wait for somebody to put one of the messages in, and then we'll get going. Here we go. Needing to push them when they're not meeting their targets or performance is down, expecting them to perform to the same level as I did. That's a real good one, that. Thank you so much. Okay, let me introduce the session for today. Today's session is called Coaching People Beyond the Dashboard: How to Manage People, Not Robots. And the big reason for this is that many SDR leaders are promoted into management because they're high performing reps, but they often lack that kind of formal experience required for people management. So, what we're going to be doing today is got two great people, Bruce and Jack, that are going to be walking through how they have got through that um, and really helped create really strong um, programs to help develop their talent in their team. One final thing before we let them loose. We have our conference happening in London on the 14th and 15th of October called Funnel EMEA. It's the conference for EMEA SDR leaders ran by EMEA SDR leaders. So we've got some great diverse voices from all across Europe, Middle East, and Africa who are going to be speaking. The first day is more for director level and above, second line leaders, and then the second day is going to be for frontline leaders. I'll put the website in the chat, and it'd be great to see you there. Bruce, Jack, turn it to you.
Thank you so much, Dave. Nice to see you and meet you if I haven't met you before. My name's Jack Blair. I've been working in sales basically since I was 18, so that's like 15 or so years experience working in sales. A number of different sales, commercial, account management, key account roles in that time. But I love management. I love coaching. That's what gets me out of bed in the mornings. And the one area I love more than anything else is developing people into coaches and managers for the future. And I think it's a thing that a lot of businesses overlook. So I hope it's something that we can tie into today. Some of the foundational management, or almost some of the gaps that we sometimes fall into, or some of the traps that we fall into, should I say? And we're going to go through, have a very nice sort of chat and conversation about our background and tie in some of the practical solutions. Bruce, over to you to intro yourself a little bit.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much, Jack, and thanks everybody for showing up. So my name is Bruce Ivan. I've been managing SDR and sales teams for about 15 years now. And like Jack a lot, I really enjoy management. Maybe I call me sick, but I really enjoy it. Of course, there's frustrating times, but I really enjoy the management part. I really enjoy the people part, especially. And I think that's a big part of what we're here to talk about is the people part. How do you work with people? Because we don't want, we're in a business of connecting with other people, right? That's what we do as SDRs. That's what we do as salespeople. We connect with other people. So if we nurture a system of robotic behavior, then that's how our SDRs, that's how our salespeople are going to behave. So I think it's the key for me is always working the people side, managing the people side, and taking it from there in order to get the results that we need to get.
Brilliant. Today's session will be very discussion based, so there's not going to be any PowerPoints to go through. It's not so much of like a presented formulaic masterclass. It's a discussion of myself and Bruce going through some of our experiences. But really, we want to hear from yourselves as well. Is this things that you're facing, have faced, might face in the future? Or are there different experiences that you've gone through that we can also discuss and bring up some real world scenarios that we can talk through, maybe some of the approaches that Bruce and I or other people on the call would take. So please engage, jump off mute and obviously ask questions or feel free to write them in the chat as we go along. I think a great place to start, Bruce, is going to be off the back of the icebreaker. So that move from closer to coach, or whatever sort of way we want to frame it, that from going from an individual contributor role to this often a hybrid role, sometimes a fixed management role. Bruce, talk through your experience of that. What was challenging? What was rewarding about that from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I never actually was put in a position of being promoted within the team, within a team that I was in, but actually like moving from being an individual contributor to being a manager, basically overnight in a really weird way. That's a story for a different time, but it's you just have to realize as the manager, number one, it's not the same. You're not in that position anymore. You are no longer an individual contributor, and you're responsible for what worked for you, but what worked for you may not work for the other people on your team. And at the end of the day, you're still responsible for getting success with those people. I quickly realized that with the first team that I became manager of, was that I was going to have to manage them each, and it was fortunate that I was managing a fairly small team, slightly differently to get them to similar goals, because they're each individuals. They each had different personalities, different things motivating them, and I had to work each one of them differently. And I was fortunate that I was able to recognize that very quickly. And I think that's something that to me, again, is something that when I talk to managers, I advise is like, you cannot manage as much as you have to do your best if you have a larger team, but you have to try to manage each individual according to their strengths and weaknesses, and not like in a straight line way. Okay, we're all going to do it this way. We're all going to do it that way. We're all going to do it. At the end of the day, you want to get the results, not necessarily the marching.
And I think that's trap number one, right? Is that trying to almost replicate yourself and what made you a top individual contributor across a department, which all have different personalities, different styles, different approaches, and almost the arrogance of assuming that your style and your approach was the best one. Well, actually, it worked for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best one across the whole department. So that knowing that there are these differences between these people is really important. For myself, I moved from an individual contributor role to a hybrid team leader role, which I think is a lot of people's route, or a supervisor role. When I'd only been at the business for about I feel like I was about 9 months in, and there was people with much bigger tenure than me. And this was back, it was marketplace tech. So I was at eBay back in the day. And this was very much that the team was expanding. I was a good individual contributor. I don't think I was necessarily the top individual contributor, but I was almost the employee that was just the most trusted to take on additional responsibility. So this landed on me, and it was suddenly a shock to the system of, there is a lot of people that now have probably more resentfulness towards me than they did before. There are people who felt that they should have got this role ahead of me, who had more tenure, who had more experience, some of who were even performing better than me in the team at the time. And I found, on my mental health, I found that incredibly challenging because it felt unjustified. But from their point of view, they were bypassed unfairly. And I felt that I did what I think is quite a natural reaction, which is you go on a bit of a charm offensive. So after you try and go a bit autocratic with it and say, okay, it's my team now, I'm going to get everyone and I'm going to get the numbers right and I'm going to get everyone pumped and etc. And then you quickly realize that everyone just thinks you're a bit of a cock. And then you backtrack on that and you say, okay, can I still be everyone's friend? And I'll go that way and I'll try and befriend everyone again and be like, oh, I'm still just one of the lads type of thing. And then that is fine until the numbers start to drop, until the attitude starts to drop, until the minimum standards of lateness and excessive lunches and people being in the pub for 3 hours while they're supposed to be at work, etc. All of that creeps in. And these are the things that they are doing these things, one, because they probably enjoy beers on their work days, but also because they think that your leadership can be exploited. Your authority doesn't exist because you're friends with them. And it took me a long time to reset that balance, and ultimately took churning some people in the team that weren't right and hiring new people that I can kind of help to bring through and mold and show my leadership and my coaching skills to somebody who actually wants to be coached, to create a bit of a ripple effect from there. So I would go back and I would change almost everything that I did in the first 3 months of moving into that role. And I feel in hindsight, not that it's just on the business, it's on me as well, but the business did not prepare me for what I was about to take in and threw me into something which I probably wasn't ready for, frankly, and I needed more training and development thereafter. Any other traps or things to look out for with these moves, Bruce?
I think one of the ones that we can maybe open up the conversation in the room is about that exact scenario you brought up. When you become the manager and there's a person, and it probably happens almost every time, there's a person in the room who thought they were going to get the job. They either applied and didn't, or they thought they were going to be tapped and weren't, whether it was you over them or you coming in from the outside. In one scenario, I came from the outside. There was a dude in the team, and he was burning that I was hired. Not me. It was because he wasn't. And he basically was like laying mines all over the place to try to blow up my management. Like he was just trying to like blow it up all the time. And he was direct actually about it with me. So let's open it up to the room. I know we have a bunch of people here. Like, if you want to raise your hand and share a scenario and how you dealt with it in that way of, you come in, you're a manager, and you have somebody on your team or people on your team who felt they should have been put into the position that you were put into. Anybody want to share on that? We're looking for hands here, folks. Jack and I are going to peter out in about 5 or 10 minutes if we don't get some participation. I can tell you that. Don't make me call on you now.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, have you been put into a position of being a manager or a team leader where there was somebody else on the team when you were put into that position? Was there somebody there who felt like they should have gotten the job? And what was the scenario, and how did you deal with that?
I guess personally, not at the moment, only because not in the exact same situation as you were kind of speaking about it. My team are very, very new, and I was hired with them. However, now that I've spent 6 months in the business, there are a bunch of AEs who are very, very tenured, who I feel like they could do the job, if that makes sense, or coach my reps have paired with them, and so they sort of coach my reps in a specific way that is maybe slightly counterintuitive to how I want to kind of run our SDR operations. That's my experience with it. Not exactly what you're mentioning there, but maybe similar.
That's a great
if I
example,
volunteer, it happened to
sorry.
me. So sorry to cut you off. Shall I go on?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Arslan.
go for it.
Yeah, a similar situation happened to me. I think probably over 2 years now. Then what I did was I worked with the individuals where the problem happened at the time, sat with them, and worked out the way how we are going to do it in the future. Sat with them, told them what the goal was, what we need to achieve, and we can only achieve it together, not alone. If we start doing this, we're just going to damage each other's. And this is what the decision has been taken by the business. So let's work through it. Let's work as colleagues, as friends, rather than managers and juniors. So this is how I worked out. Worked really well. Still working with the same team now, with those same people, and those people are today are my biggest supporters.
That's awesome.
Brilliant. Well done.
That's really awesome.
It's been 3.5 years since I'm working with the business, and it happened after
Well done.
a year of I started with the business.
Brilliant
Well
work.
done. Yeah, well done.
Bruce,
Well done.
Bruce, I suppose a good way to go from this is, let's say that we've got a, whether it's an AE or it's an experienced SDR, and they're coming up to that position where they're maybe getting a little bit of itchy feet. They're thinking, what's next? And we feel like this supervisor, player coach style hybrid role is going to be most suitable for them. What's the sort of things that you would be, I suppose, helping to prepare them for, helping train them on, or even looking for in an interview for it as well? What are the sort of things that we're looking for to get somebody up to that next stage of their career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I always look at this. I wrote a LinkedIn post about it a couple of weeks ago. Is that the top performers don't always become the best coaches. It's in sports. I mean, it's just across the board in sports. Like the two guys who were coaching in the NBA Finals, Mike Brown and Mitch Johnson, they never played a day in the NBA. Neither one of them played a day in the NBA. And I know it's in other sports as well. I think it's often those people who are promoted, and sometimes the challenge is they are promoted because they're the top performer, right? We talked about one of the things we want to talk about on this webinar is not managing just according to the stats on the dashboard, but very often you have the people who are the top on the dashboard. They're the ones where somebody pointing out and saying, oh, he should be a manager, she should be a manager, because they're the top performer. Now, it does happen sometimes that they are a good manager and that they can be a good manager. To me, the first thing I look for is somebody who's coming to me and saying, like, I'd be interested in it. Now most SDRs they're interested in becoming AEs. They don't want to go into management. They don't want to deal with it for the main reasons that we're talking about on the webinar today. But if I am looking for somebody like that, the first thing I'm going to ask them is this something you really want to do? Is something you really want to do? It's not simple. It doesn't, just because you know how to do the job doesn't mean that you will be able to manage people to do the job. Do you like doing something like this? Do you see yourself, doing something like this, coaching other people, and maybe run them through some of these scenarios that we're discussing here today in really simple, like not high pressure, obviously, but like how would you deal with this scenario? How would you deal with the scenario if somebody else on the team says they should have got the job, not you? How would you, how are you going to get some, very often when I'm hiring, let's say, team leads, I'm asking these kind of questions, scenario-based questions. How are you going to get, a person who's a B up to an A performer? How would you do that? What would you imagine you need to do to get that done? And see, first of all, that's going to test, do they really want to do the job? Because they're going to start saying, oh crap, I don't want anything to do with that. That's going to suck. Or they're going to be like, okay, the wheels start to turn, and especially if you can start to nurture people up, that's great. If you have that flexibility and you have that, that time to nurture people up to the role, that's awesome.
Excellent. I think I totally agree, and I think often top individual contributors make very bad managers because of how almost simplistic they see the role, or how they see that it will just be a transition of their greatness through to the next phase, and it doesn't work like that at all. I think one of the things that I look for in a team is that you've got this I'm trying to think of the right way if you can see in a team, often you can see the dynamic. If they're physically there in front of you, obviously it's a lot easier. I know some of us will be managing virtual teams, but even with virtual teams, you will see these people within the team that naturally are getting gravitated towards. And a lot of that is because they are helpful. They are just good at answering questions, of holding knowledge and being able to share that with team members, of motivating and inspiring people. And they're doing it from the role of an individual contributor. Whether or not they're a top performer or a mid performer, they probably won't be a low performer, I tell you that. But whether they're a top performer or a mid performer, they have got the organic mentality of trying to help the people around them. And that is kind of what you're looking for who's going to be the most suitable to take the next step. Now, that doesn't mean that they're always going to be great, and it doesn't mean that the top individual contributor isn't going to be great. But they're the type of like natural skills. And then can you build around them? And I think if you're promoting someone from an individual contributor into a hybrid type of role, as a leader of that department, do not take your eye off it. Don't just assume that they're just going to take to it like a duck to water. Even if they come to you and they say everything's fine, everything's wonderful, ask another follow-up question, because they will just be desperate to impress you, and often things won't be as they seem, and you'll need to be really close to it, particularly for the first 3 months. Let's jump on to dashboard side of things, right? So we are in a world now totally different to how it was when a lot of us started in this industry, right? We have more access to data than we've ever had before. Is that a good thing or not? It only depends on how we actually interpret and then use that data that we're getting, right? So, Bruce, I don't know if you want to kick us off with some of the great things, and then obviously the things to watch out for when it comes to using dashboards, in particularly around things like activity metrics and leading indicators.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like I like to try to manage from results. Start with the results, and then manage backwards through the data to determine what I need to bring to each one-on-one. Let's say when I'm coaching a rep. Okay, I'm not saying there are times when we say as a team, guys, we're ladies and gentlemen, we are all dropping the ball here. We're all not working hard enough. You can there are times, but when it comes down to the one-on-ones, I like to use the data to point out things that are going well, right? Look, your conversion rate from pickups to conversations is really excellent, and it's been moving up, and that's great. What do you think you're doing well? And then come to the one-on-one, let's say prepared to discuss what do I think they're doing well on those calls that they're doing. Okay, and how do you think we might be able to even do it even better? Like how can we do it better? Maybe going back to the scenario we just discussed, so and so on the team, Jane is struggling in that area. Is there a way that would you be able to spend, instead of with us together? And it's, it kind of brings them into the, takes a little of the pressure off you as they say, hey, can we work with her together and see maybe you can add some suggestions there. And then, look for then, obviously there's going to be points that are going to need to be brought up how are we going to fix this, whatever it is. Let's go back to the same scenario. You're getting a lot of calls connecting, but very few going into conversations, right? I'm going to listen to some of the recordings. I'm going to come up and we're going to discuss what we need to put into place. What do they think? What do I think? And then we're going to come up with what I like to do is sort of a contract, a soft contract together. Okay, let's agree that we're going to do this week and see how it goes. And then whatever it is, again, according to the stats, whatever we need to fix or whatever we feel we need to fix, we're gonna make an agreement together what needs to be done, and let's test it out. Now, I've had scenarios where I've had reps basically they walk out of the room and they do whatever they were doing before anyway, and then we have to have a different kind of conversation. And then I have reps who go, look, I've always said the worst. And I'm obviously the worst manager I ever had gave me the best advice. He said, look, I kind of pushed back on something when I was an individual contributor that I didn't feel was fair that he was asking me to do. And he said, okay, I understand. You don't think it's fair. Do it for a week. Just do it for a week. Do it exactly the way I asked you to do it for a week. Is that okay? Are you willing to do it, my way for a week? And let's see what happens after a week. So it's not like saying from now on, you need to do it this way. It's let's try it. Let's see how it goes and let's go. But again, it goes back to my original point of you have different people and you need to bring them to that, to that watering hole differently. And that's, that to me is the secret sauce of being a good manager, is leading people to the same conclusion, but you have to lead them the way they need to be led, not the same way. And each rep you're going to have a one-on-one with is going to be totally different.
Brilliant. And that's where the emotional intelligence side of your role is going to come in, right? And if you are wise to this and you can see it and you can keep your ear close to the ground without keeping your head close to the ground, you're in an amazing position. I love the sort of consented commitment from the reps. This is why a lot of one-to-ones will ultimately lead to nowhere, because you end it and you've probably had reasonable discussion and you've talked through some improvement points, but you end it saying, okay, brilliant. So do we know what we're going to do? Let's just go and try and implement whatever we've just been talking about. Well, that's not going to take us anywhere, right? That commitment from them to say, yes, I'm going to commit to doing this for this period of time, and then we're going to commit and agree to touch base at this point where we'll discuss what's happened in it. So much more powerful. Reps we humans are creatures of comfort, right? We'll go to often the path of least resistance. So changing your pitch, changing your approach, changing anything with the way you're doing things, particularly if you've been doing it for a while, is really uncomfortable. And sometimes we just have to force the change, as you said. Do it for a week, and then if you still don't like it, then we'll change it back. What I want to do at the moment is just ask for some engagement in the chat now. We've all got dashboards. Our dashboards, so whoever's got the biggest dashboard is the winner. What I want to ask for is, what is the one metric right now that you could not manage without? What's the one metric of everything that you've got on your dashboards in data? What's the one metric that you feel like you couldn't do without right now? Post for me, please, in the chat that's there.
Is there anyone alive out there? Come on, guys. Talk ratio.
Conversions.
What are we like when we say, Francisco, when you say talk ratio, what are you specifically relating to?
Nice to meet you guys. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me well.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect. When I mentioned talk ratio, I'm specifically seeing the amount of time that the SDR is speaking compared to the client. So it really depends on the personality of the SDR, but the majority of the time we try to go for between 20% to 40% is the SDR, and 40% is already way too much. It really depends how engaging the conversation is. but
Brilliant.
that's what I look to, and it's a key indicator for me.
Excellent. And then we've got a lot of comments around conversion rate. So I know there's a few different drop points for conversion rate. So outreaches to meeting booked to meeting turned up, and then obviously your conversion to close or did agreed, however long your funnel might be on things. So them type of metrics that we're now getting into, along with the talk ratios as well, we're getting into the quality of stuff, right? So that's the thing that we want to see, is that quality of performance, but being able to see it on a dashboard, not having to go into, I remember having call recordings and you've literally got to either be sat right next to your team to understand what's going on with a splitter headphone, or you've got to go individually into calls at random often to find out what is actually happening on these calls to see anything of any quality. So the talk ratios, none of that existed. We've now got all access to that. So for me, having the transcription analysis and like the quality of transcription analysis tools is now so good. That type of thing, I think back in the day, the amount that I would have done on that back in the day, and I would have used that for every single one-to-one, etc., because you're talking about stuff that matters and what people enjoy talking about. Brilliant stuff. So another thing that nobody mentioned was activity. I totally agree. I actually think if you deal with the quality side of it, if people are better sellers and they are more confident sellers, and you're talking about the quality and their skills, etc., the activity will naturally go up. But if you say to them, I need you to make more calls, why are you not making enough calls? You might get better, you might actually get more calls, but you won't actually get better performance. Everything will stay the same. They might just make a few more calls because you're sort of beating them around the head with it, but it won't actually lead to anything tangible in terms of the growth. Like, don't get me wrong, you still want to have minimum standards and expectations for activity, but it should all bleed through in the rest of the funnel anyway. So absolutely agree. So the next thing, if we go on to talk about, okay, so we've got our dashboards, we've got our most important. I've got a question. What do you focus on when using AI to analyze call transcriptions? What should be included within the prompt to get great insights? So I've used some different tools for it, and often they will score the calls based on some preset criteria that they have, the quality of it, the talk ratios, the objection handles. I will often be looking for, I only want calls that are like actually reasonably long and juicy to get into. And then I'll try and get, okay, can I grab 2 or 3 of the top scoring calls that this individual's done and 2 or 3 of the bottom scoring calls, just on whatever algorithm it's using, and sort of trust that the algorithm knows what a good call and a bad call is. That's when I'll then dive into them, listen to them, or sometimes it will highlight the areas to listen into. From that will prep me for that one-to-one, right? So I will know enough from what they are like when they're at their best and what they're like when they're at their worst that I can then take into it. A lot of things the call recordings can highlight, I suppose, that or the transcription analysis along with the call recordings is the tonality of things, the type of questions that people are asking, how they're handling objections, etc. But the main thing that I look for in the calls, I always think that if somebody is good at asking interesting questions, thought-provoking questions, and then really engaging in the answers and using them as the next points to go on. And I sort of get, like, in an SDR, we might not have that much time on these calls, right? So you're looking for that opening 30 seconds. Is it good? Is it interesting? Then what are we doing with that next slot there, the sort of needs find section of it? Are we asking interesting questions, or are we just asking the same sort of crap that they'll get asked every single day by any SDR? And how are we using the information they give them? The most frustrating thing for me is when we ask a question to the customer and then the customer will give us possibly something incredibly juicy. And then we'll just say, okay, anyway, the next part of my message is to talk to you about this, this, and this. And I'm like, what? That's an open goal. Why have you possibly gone through that? So they are the types of things that I'm sort of listening out for when I'm on the call, and I'm using the transcription analysis to really just highlight the calls that I should be listening to. One thing I'll tag on to that with this is you will get different personalities of your SDRs, right? Some of them will be really, really self-critical and ambitious, and that's a wonderful mix of the people who will be great for self-coaching. Not enough onus is put on the individuals to coach and develop themselves through things to improve their own call quality. And sharing the transcription analysis so that people can go in, dive into their calls, see what the AI is saying about the conversations that they're having or that their peers are having. Top reps absolutely love this stuff. They much prefer it than hearing myself or somebody go through and talk to them in detail. They just want to pick up the insights themselves and make the improvement. So if we can get some of that data to the individuals themselves, the top ones will absolutely love it. And the other ones, there's a bit more work for us to do on it, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think also, following up on that, and going into some of the key aspects of what we do as SDRs, right? Like, let's say, the issue of how we book the meeting, right? And which relates to no-shows, things like that. Are we following a somewhat, and here's where, like, sometimes I am pretty rigid about a procedure, like, okay, when you book the meeting, let's agree that we're going to, send out a calendar invitation, and we're, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, right? And this is something that I'm using a lot of times. I'll use the AI for, is to say, are we following the procedure of how we book the meeting? Like, where we do have a procedure, we should be following the procedure, okay? And we can use the AI to make sure that the procedure is being followed and what's happening there. So I think that's, and again, it goes back to call openers, right? Are we like, is it like the boring old, hi, it's Bruce calling from so-and-so, I'm calling in relation to so, like, or are we like engaging? And I think I like to try to use the AI as much as possible to pull that out, because that's that's a place that we can use. Anything, again, goes back to what Jack said. What you can pull from each conversation or from groups of conversations as a team and as an individual, in your coaching, is enormous now. The Gong scorecards, I don't want to just say Gong, other people have it. It's crazy, really, what it can do and what you can align it to do for you, and help you pull things out. And also, is for me, I'm also looking for changes in behavior, like, what happened over here that didn't happen over here? How come this call really went well, and how come this call didn't go well? And let's break it down using some of the AI to diagnose what might have happened here that didn't happen on the other call. So that's again, that's just from me as well.
Brilliant. We're gonna. I know we haven't got too much time left, so we're gonna jump through the next couple of things. And one that sort of ties in nicely that I've used as a sort of practical coaching or development tool, particularly when people are suffering, agents are suffering from confidence issues, is this type of work, right? So you grab their top calls, you grab things that converted all the way through, etc., and you'll grab them and you'll say, well, let's listen to this call together and let's dissect it together and see what's good in it, what we would do differently. But you're deliberately grabbing one of their better conversations, and it just reminds them. Lewis Hamilton won the Grand Prix at the weekend, and he put it down to a fan saying, Lewis, don't forget who you are, basically. And it's that same tactic of saying, like, you are an unbelievable rep, you're just in a bit of a rut right now. Let's remind ourselves of what we're great at and why we were great, and then let's start getting back to that. Form is temporary, class is permanent, that type of thing. So the next couple of things are sort of bringing this data from the dashboards, and we're able to kind of get insights on where performance is slipping like we never have before. Now we've got that, what are we going to do about it? So how do we then take that into understanding exactly what's happening with that individual who is underperforming in this scenario, and how we then develop them through it? So we're talking about how we're going to set up to have the conversations, the types of conversations we're going to have, the frameworks we're going to use, etc. So, Bruce, I don't know if you can sort of give an example of what you do. We've identified somebody that's underperforming at the moment. How are we going to set up to develop? But they're keen as mustard to get back on track. So how are we going to have these conversations with them?
Yeah, great. It's a great point. It's always hard. Hard conversations are hard to have. We fancy ourselves as nice people, and we don't want to have these super challenging conversations. I think it starts with, you know, what's going on with them. What's, like, let's be honest. We're noticing this pattern. But let's start with you. Is there something going on, maybe outside? I'm not asking to get into your personal life completely. Is there something that, that's affecting you negatively, right, in the role right now? Are you, we're all human beings, maybe they got a problem with their girlfriend, boyfriend, dog, parents, who knows, right? Try to be as sensitive as you can be to understand if that's playing into what's going on. So that's something that I try to pull into the one-on-ones. How's life? How are things? Try to learn a little bit about them along the way. What do they enjoy doing? Running, biking, swimming, whatever it is. And then we're just going to talk. But first of all, we have to make sure we're all talking on the same page. Okay. Because if we're not talking on the same page, if we're not understanding each other, if we're not like saying, okay, do we agree? Can we come to an understanding that we've got a problem here? We've got a challenge, and we both want to solve the challenge, right? Yes. Okay. If we can get it, then we have to make sure we're on the same page. Because sometimes you have a rep saying, I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem. You're asking me to do something that's impossible. The quotas are impossible. The numbers are impossible. What you're asking of us is impossible. It's not possible. So, if you know that it's possible, and if you have other reps that are doing it, you have to be able to sensitively point out, well, you can't really say that because we do have people who are doing it. And, it's not out of the realm, or, you have to have your kind of numbers together, right, to be able to defend why you're asking them to do it, to get to this way. And then it goes back to like, okay, so what can we do? Let's talk it out. You tell me, you want to get better? Do you want to get better? Yes, I want to get better. Great. What do you think? What do you suggest? Before I'm going to suggest, what do you suggest? What do you want to do? You want to try something? You want to do something different? Do you want to, where do you need my help? Right? Perhaps they're not speaking up. They're frustrated, whatever it is. What can I do to help? How can I make this a little bit better? And then again, it's going to go back to what I discussed before, is before we leave the room, we're going to come up on some kind of an agreement, some kind of a basic contract, not too many points, but let's agree we're going to work on these things this week and see how we can improve. Maybe even, in some cases it's a PIP, day by day. We have to monitor the situation. Listen, I have to be honest with you. I'm talking to my rep. I have to be honest with you. This is where we're at right now. Okay. We're at this point. I don't want to sugarcoat it. We're at this point because the next step is the PIP, and we know where that can lead. So let's try to fix it before. Okay. And let's take steps to fix it. And again, make sure that the steps, to me, it's also like making sure that the steps are achievable. Like, goes back to what you said before, Jack, is that they feel good when they've achieved the mid-range steps that we're looking for to get to the improvement. That's what I'm going for in those scenarios.
Brilliant. And I think adding in from my side, and I think there's so much amazing stuff there that can help us with these types of conversations. So for me, I lean into this. We spoke about consent-based, right? It has to feel like it's driven from them. Otherwise, they won't adopt any of what we're trying to do. So the consent-based feedback is really important. It sounds so stupid and simple, but just simply asking somebody if they are okay for you to give them feedback. Now, you might say, well, I'm a manager. Of course, I can give them feedback. I promise if you just ask, look, can I give you some feedback on a call that I listened to? Or can I give you a feedback around this? And once they say yes, their guard is immediately dropped. They are more receptive to what you're going to say. And then it's about how you download the information of your concerns, your feelings, your emotions to them on something, right? So don't try and sugarcoat things or hold things back. Just tell them what things look like from your perspective and offer them the chance to sort of counter that with their perspective. These types of conversations are really, really important. To sort of tail off on a lot of what Bruce said, I use the GROW model, which is also known as an ARGO model, if you want to sort of flip it the other way. So the GROW model stands for goal, reality, options, and will. So the start of that, you can switch the G and the R around either way, but the goal is, okay, where do we want to get to? Where do you want to get to as an individual? The reality is, where are we at right now? What's going on currently? O is for options. What could we be doing here? You're prompting this out of them, right? What are the options? What could we be doing? What could we be trying? And then W is will. What are we going to do? What will we do? What are we going to come out of here committing to doing? The final part, which we won't get too much time to dive into, I appreciate we're sort of now running out, but it's about, you could have the most amazing coaching conversation with somebody, but they could go out of that room and go straight back to their behaviors, or more than likely they'll do the right thing until they face a bit of resistance or one of their calls go wrong, and then they'll default to their first place. How you hold them accountable and how they hold themselves accountable in this to get that change adopted long term is really, really important. So last point is, don't just assume that conversation is enough. If you're not following up on it, then you've basically wasted both of your time.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been in this scenario before. And you have to, like, I'm a big fan in that scenario of pointing it out sooner rather than later. Like, hey, were we not in the same room when we discussed, changing your pitch this way because, or bringing more energy into the calls because I'm not feeling it. And yeah. Do we not, like, because sometimes, and then, I've had scenarios where the reps like, yeah, right. Oh, right. Got it. And, it's a different conversation now.
The earlier that you deal with something which is frustrating you as a manager, the easier it will be. It might feel uncomfortable in that moment, but I promise you it will be so much more comfortable than it will be in 3, 4, 5 months' time, when what was just a little frustration is now a big issue that you need to deal with. So that's one of my biggest advices to my former self, which is just deal with this stuff. Just have the conversations. Just have the bottle to go and have the conversations with people. Don't shy away from it. Don't just think it will go away by itself. Dave,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I know we've run over time, I think.
Yeah, I just want to make one more point. I think there's probably some people on the call that are in their first or second management role. You're going to get better. You're just going to get better. And I feel like, I've grown as a manager from role to role. I look back on some of the stuff, from my early roles as a manager, and I cringe at, I want to call some of the reps up and say, like, I'm really sorry, because that was really crap management at that time. You're going to get better. You're going to grow in the role. Reach out. Like, I'm just opening it up right now. Reach out to me on LinkedIn and stuff like that. You want to connect and talk about these issues. I love talking about it. I just love connecting about it. Whether it's me or Jack or anybody else who does it, find yourself a mentor or a coach, even if it's somebody that you may need to pay or something like that. Your company might be even willing to invest in that. I've had it where companies that I work for invested in it for me, and it was invaluable, absolutely invaluable to have that, a person that I could go to for an hour a week and just talk through some of the scenarios. And we've got this group here, this SDR Leaders of EMEA, where you have just an endless number of people who are in the same position. And maybe today they're not going through the same thing as you, but you should for sure be able to find somebody. And we've got, Slack groups where you can reach out and find people who are going through some of the same things, and reach out, ask for help. Just the same way you would expect a rep to ask for help. You should ask for help yourself, because it's the only way you're going to get better in the role.
Brilliant.
Great way to end it. Jack, Bruce, thank you ever so much. Thank you everyone for being in and the questions that you asked. We will send out the recording of this, the link to our YouTube channel as well, for you to be able to check that out. And have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.